table and we taking our portions. Of course, the discourse is a sativa show where the content and the guest is unbelievable, but we speak in codes. It's the podcast of the culture, so you already know. We from that big West Coast, boy, where it never snows, where the topics get hot, but the rosin is cold. Here's the next episode, yeah.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Joint Forces. I'm your host, Luke Scarmazzo. With me I have CEO and founder of Tahoe Wellness Center, a founding board member of the National Cannabis Industry Association, Lake Tahoe City Council member and former mayor, current mayor pro tem, CEO of Bijou, cannabis freedom fighter, Emerald Triangle guerrilla grower, community organizer, activist, real estate mogul, legacy OG, the one and only outlaw weed mayor, and my friend Cody Bass. Welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here for sure.
Yeah, man. This is a special episode because, like, the history that is really involved with you, like all the parts where my life and our stories like intersect and indirectly it's awesome. Like everybody who's on the show watching right now, you guys are in for like a really, really special one. We start at the beginning on this, Cody. So I know like a lot of your story has been well documented. You know, you are the former mayor of South Lake Tahoe, current mayor pro tem.
Yeah, man.
Congratulations,
yeah,
brother.
Man. Thank you, man. Definitely.
Listen, you know you're the first politician that I've ever had on the podcast.
Oh, right on. Well, you know, it's politics for me is something that, you know, really it was not a life path thing. You know, it really kind of cannabis is what, in a sense, brought me into it because, you know, I was continuously in different city council realms and really just the real seeing of the need for change at a local level. Is what got me into it, but it's been a good thing, really. We've been able to do good things for Tahoe, and I've learned a lot through it. But again, it's definitely not. I always sometimes even forget. Oh yeah, I am a politician somewhat because it's
some
like
people.
There's
some people call you a hero. I saw that written.
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, like I really focused on. I think you know, local politics. There's a lot of good, especially in a place like Tahoe, and really anywhere where we really need to. You know, have real leadership and people that truly care about the place and the community.
You were kind of forced in it, huh?
In a way, yeah, most definitely. I mean, you know, from what we were dealing with and Tahoe was dealing with for decades, which is kind of the good old boy club sense of politics that you see in a lot of small towns. And
I could relate to that.
So we really needed to see change. And yeah, cannabis, because that's what was, you know, bringing me into city council to see not only the way they were dealing with our industry, but the way they were dealing with so many issues.
Right.
And then it was also because I was in the paper because of cannabis for decades that the whole town knew me and they had already watched me for a while. And they were like, you know what? They're like, he's, you know, I was able to represent myself because of, you know, being an advocate and being a dispensary owner and consistently having to fight them. And so that kind of helped me have a platform to be able to you know, to where I was known and then I was elected and then I was elected again. So
yeah, hold on. I want to get to that. We'll dive in a little bit deeper on that because the story of you getting elected and then getting elected again and then and then you becoming mayor, like that deserves its own part of this. So we'll get to that.
Yeah.
You start out born in Plano, Texas.
Yeah, man. So I was.
That's a small Texas town.
It was back then. It was. Yeah. When I was born, you know, in 1980. So back then it was like still dirt roads, and especially the area where we're at. And now it's like a massive
built out now. Now they got some stoplights and some McDonald's and stuff there.
No, it's
Walmart.
It's definitely big. But I, you know, grew up in Texas was, you know, a place that, in a way, I'm glad that I was growing up in Texas. It teaches you a certain way, but also through the 80s and the 90s, it was also, you know, for a guy like me and for my family, it was a really kind of the wrong place to be. And I was really blessed to get out of Texas, honestly, when I was a teenager, because I don't know if I'd probably be, who knows? Who knows right now?
Never know in Texas.
That's for sure.
You said Texas was rough for like a family like yours. your family was growers back then, right?
So actually, no, my pops was more of he was like a smuggler. So back in the day, they, you know, in the early 70s, late 60s, my pops began to smuggle from like Acapulco into Texas and New Mexico, and they would use, you know, like airplanes, and basically there was a lot of cannabis back in that day that was grown by the folks out, you know, like tribes of people outside of Acapulco, and it was
Oaxaca.
Oh, exactly, man. They would make, you know, they literally clear runways, and you'd buy bales of cannabis. And then,
the old bales.
Exactly.
They still use the terminology now. They just don't come around anymore.
Right. That's right. And then they would, I mean, it was the way that they were able to smuggle through the 70s before the war on drugs was funded at the level it became in the later part of the 70s and 80s. And so
they had the heyday for a second. There was no DEA. No. There was no like border like security that was clamping down. A lot of those guys could like just drive right in or just fly right in, land right in with the bales right
on the real,
just with a blue tarp over them.
It was wild the way they used to be able to rock it. Like, and you know, the customs hadn't even locked up the borders, so you could, like, you know, places like the Big Bend Canyon and
just walk right
the border
across
of Texas and Mexico, they could just, you know, drop airplanes down to under the little level of radar they'd have, and then you'd pop back up and be in the U.S. and then land out on like blacktop highways out in New Mexico in the middle of the night, because you could see cars, you know, 100 miles each way, and boom, quickly land. And so they were doing that in that day. And but you know, our family, and along with a lot of the other families involved in cannabis at that time, were really like very peaceful people that had no weapons or ever had any violence, and it was really a peaceful trade. And it was before a lot of what we deal with today in that element, and it was really trade between, you know, that's what it was all about. But yeah, and so I was raised much different than a lot of Texas folks. You know, like my folks were, because of that and the way they were, you know, I was raised vegan and very, you know, we had gone through a lot. You know, my dad got his first case in federal case, but way back in the 70s, and got locked up.
Your dad ends up getting locked up, right?
He gets locked up twice. First, before I was born, you know, way back when, but before that they had made RICO and a lot of these crazy laws at the federal level. But then in the 80s gets you know, another case and gets like 15 years.
Damn.
And then, you know, they took out like my uncle, you know, got 2 life sentences with zero violence, just
for weed.
For weed.
Your uncle got 2 life sentences for weed.
Yeah, he did. He got 2 life sentences. He got on the 3 strikes you're out, and then they got him on like a kingpin charge because of, you know, he was like one of the very first RICO cases they were able to prosecute.
That's
just
sad,
after they passed all that, you know. And that was what, you know, when all this gets looked back, and it's kind of intense what the people that were trading before, and, you know, our family out of the South, a lot of families out of the West Coast, all over the country that were really like, you know, peaceful, good people that, again, were just trading and doing it well. And they took those families out and took those people out, and it's replaced it with what we deal with today, where there's not a level of trade. It's just a very dominant, you know, force of folks that there is no existence of trade.
We're driven by greed and money and all the negative things that the plant doesn't bring around.
That's right.
How old were you when your dad caught the 15 years?
I was 9 years old in '89 when he went away. Damn. They rolled him in like '86, and then it took, you know, years to prosecute him. So yeah, I was a young kid, but then that's really what like got me, you know, like kind of sparked the fire around
of advocacy.
Because I didn't, you know, the first time I went and saw my dad in prison and like crossed through, it was in like Huntsville, Texas, and then I shortly after was like, I gotta smoke weed, because what is how do you go to prison for this? Like, because you know,
I gotta check this out. My dad went to prison for it. I gotta see what's wrong with it.
Yeah. So the first time, you know, and then it's like, man, how is this even possible?
Then you realize the lie.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get, as a teenager, you get really angry at first. For me, that's how, and start smoking more weed. You know, that was really
I think my daughter could probably relate to you on that.
Yeah.
She went through that same process, man. And man, I'm sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, again, I mean, it was definitely I've witnessed
that affected you as a kid
Oh,
tremendously.
it definitely does, and you see how it tears apart families. Like it's unreal, and it's just something that is not a crime. And when you look at what real crime is and what it it is something.
It's actually I'm going to go as far as to say it's a crime to put somebody in a cage for a plant.
100%, man. That is truly the crime. Like, it's trying to criminalize what heals us, whether it's cannabis or any plant. Like, our human people have to have the right to everything that heals us. And
absolutely.
Plant life is at the very top of that list, if not the top.
Amen.
And that is a crime for anybody that doesn't come out of the world of medicine to even be trying to mess with any part of what medicine is a crime. I mean, it shouldn't be allowed, and but that's also why it's a civil right, and how we are overcoming it.
The sad part too is even people coming out of the world of medicine, because they're taught the Western style of medicine, have been taught to demonize the natural medicines and natural remedies that have been around for hundreds and thousands of years.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable how much we have taught or made people believe that everything that they put in their body needs to come from this sterile form.
Right.
And especially if it's something that's going to be a medicine. Well, of course, you got to go to a doctor that sends you to a pharmacy that gives you something out of a laboratory.
One that sends him to Hawaii.
Yes.
Let's just put that out there.
That's right. Yeah. That's all the real. So that's what, but also a big part of I think what's amazing about cannabis and what it has shown people, the more that we've been able to free the plant and make it accessible to people, is that they go, wow, if I can see this much relief from this natural plant, cannabis, it opens their mind to so many other natural forms of whole plant medicine. And
and that's really, I guess you just hit the reason why it's kept in the dark, right? Is because it's such an eye-opening experience that it might just be, it might not even be, oh yeah, I continue to use cannabis. It might just be an eye-opening experience on something totally different.
Absolutely.
And that's scary to the people who want control.
Yeah.
Let's keep that 100.
That's a fact. Yep.
We won't get too crazy on that, but we'll leave it there.
Yep. Definitely.
So you're in Texas for a little while, and then you decide to make the move to Cali.
Yeah, so I was 15 when I got out to California in '95, and I got to Big Bear, or actually a place called Running Springs. It's up in the mountains, and I was there a couple of years and backpacked, and then I finally made my way up to Tahoe in 1997. Okay. I was just a 17-year-old kid, and didn't know anybody in town, and it was
from
cool, man.
Plano, Texas.
From Plano, yeah.
What's up?
And I knew some folks in the Bay, but I didn't know anybody in Tahoe. But man, as soon as I crossed the ridge and saw Tahoe for the first time, man, I knew.
That thing is breathtaking, right?
It really is, man.
It's when you see the lake coming over the ridge right there. It's there's a feeling. You can't describe it unless you have seen it. You get this certain feeling.
Yeah, man.
And it's like the angels are singing or something.
It's real. It is, man. It's one of the most, majestic, most beautiful places on the earth. And definitely for the alpine environment. There's nowhere like it. And Tahoe, it also is it's a really, it's a good. There's just a lot of people that live a good way of life, and so I was really blessed to get there. But I was also, when I first got there and moved there, I mean, to live in Tahoe, it's always, they've kind of almost had a joke back when you were a young local. It was like poverty with a view, right? You get $7 an hour to work the mountain, but we give you a free ski pass. Right. And so it was you didn't really care because you just snowboard every day. Right. And that was the life. But the thing is I liked to work, and I also had a real love for cannabis. By that point, I really, had seen the need for real change in cannabis, and I got to California, and in '96, the year after I get here, Prop 215 passes, and coming out of
Prime
Texas,
time.
Yeah, you never ever believe that would ever be a real thing to see cannabis.
Nobody did. My aunts and uncles that were here were like, we fought for this our whole life since the 60s, and we can't believe it.
Yeah, it was and especially people in Texas were like, that's not even real. Right. And it
those
really,
damn Californians are lying out there.
Exactly. And so, but there was always in Tahoe, there was always you could get cannabis from a whole group people that Tahoe's always been that place,
Right.
because it's Northern California's playground and
For sure.
the world's playground for that fact. But there was always good weed in Tahoe.
Always has been.
Yeah, exactly. We were stoked on that. And so, I basically met a guy the first year I was up there that lived up in Laytonville. And I started, I would go in the summers and work up in Mendo. And
you met the plug.
Yeah, we did, man. And
you
what
ran
was cool
into the Mendo plug.
It was because of snowboarding. My buddy works at the snowboard shop, like right on Ski Run Boulevard, and the guy that we met walks in just like, yo, I want to know how to snowboard. Me and my daughter are here. Right. Just like lace up, hook us up on the snowboard and the gear, and
I'll plug you guys.
I got a half pound right here, and this is like 98. My buddy's like, what? Like,
right?
We got you,
right?
Like, no problem.
A half pound of like the really good back then was a rare thing.
It was, yeah. So, and that's what linked us up with them, and basically, so I start going up there every year, and this was like 98. So we were still.
What is that, a 4 or 5 hour drive?
Yeah, Laytonville is about 5 hours from.
You're not doing that in a day.
No, it was and it was just the days back then up there, especially, were still all full camouflage. Like we were still running from camp. All your plants had to be up under canopies.
You were really guerrilla growing.
Yeah, it was
like
still
the real canopies, or tarps pulled over with the camo, and it
was no joke. We did everything. Like, you'd have to go out on ridges and cut these crazy canopies up, and you'd still leave the top of the canopy, but
to block it a little canopy. Bit, right?
And
just enough to let the sun in.
Exactly, that's right, just enough. And you would grow so many plants and get a quarter pound to a half pound a plant.
Right.
And so you'd have to grow 1,000 or 2,000 of them way out on
the whole side of the mountain.
And you played odds. It was like you very well were going to lose a couple of those crops from camp, but you had enough planted throughout the whole mountain.
Damn, I ain't heard that acronym in hell.
Oh yeah,
what does that shit even stand for? Campaign Against Marijuana Planting.
That's right. Yeah.
See, damn, I remembered it. You damn propagandist.
Yep. No, I mean, it was wild back in those early days, man. That was also still super active, and really all the way
that craziness.
I mean, we had passed Prop 215 as the voters, but it took until really like 2005 to really get the courts to even have any part of acceptance. And even then,
maybe even later than that, I would say.
Yeah, the Highway Patrol was still fighting us up to
all the way to the end.
2010, until we could get a case that actually
they were vicious.
That they would even listen to,
How bad were they coming down the 101 going south into the bay?
We called it the gauntlet.
The gauntlet.
If you could get between basically like Laytonville all the way up to Ukiah, and then the second gauntlet would be Sonoma County,
right?
And I mean, they just not long ago, those guys in Roanoke Park,
you literally passed car pulled over. It
was crazy, man. Yeah. There'd be little towns like Willits where they just. That was what fed their whole town, not their whole town, but the government of those towns. Right, it was like a crazy,
the little
and
racket
a lot of
they
corruption,
had.
Honestly, and that's one of the things, I've seen with law enforcement, right? And you look at the drug policy and honestly, what it has done to corrupt our local law enforcement all the way up to the federal level, to where you look back into the day before these policies that aren't crimes were passed, and the resources needed to protect communities that do revolve around true crime, whether it's stealing, murder, these things that are real crimes where there is
nobody wants to live
for
around.
Law enforcement, and if we only were needing to protect around those crimes, you'd need so much less law enforcement than we have today. And the people that truly want to protect the community from those people are generally not bad folks, right? But when you allow these policies like the drug policy to infest our law enforcement, it creates a
culture.
It creates a culture, and you get people that want the badge because that's the only way they can play a part in the game, because they're not really going to be people that play in the game, but they're going to hold this badge and use it against our communities, against our society, and it's based on these ill policies. And so it really is there's such a need to continue to change these policies moving forward.
Absolutely, and to make it truly a organization that protects and serves, and that's a two-sided thing, right? And I think that communication needs we're a long way from it. I'm glad that people are even talking about it now, because back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, that wasn't a talk. There wasn't a talk about, hey, let's have better police community relations around cannabis.
Yeah, no, it was not even. And I mean, we were shunned. We were looked at as criminals to the fullest extent.
Still, I mean, still
and from
are.
a lot of them, we are. Especially, you know, we're in California, but even there's a lot of very conservative parts of California. You know, I just drove through El Dorado County on the way here.
El Dorado, so, you know, Stanislaus, OC.
I mean, it's no joke. It's still like very alive here. But at the same time, I mean, I think that you're even seeing parts of law enforcement that see that.
Absolutely.
Right. And so hopefully
I'll give you an example. So Burner does a show in Modesto on 420 or on 418 for a 420 weekend, right? And he invites us down there to come hang out with them. So, you know, he pulls the Cookies bus up right in the middle of downtown on 10th Street. So, like, you know, it's like a flock of people, everyone around. And so I tell one of my partners that's next to me, I'm like, oh, it's only going to be a matter of time before Modesto police come in here and really start tripping. And sure enough, like within like 5 minutes, a cop comes like rolling up, right? And then he stops and I go, oh, here we go. He gets out, shakes Burner's head of security's hand, and they start talking and laughing together. It blew me away.
Yeah. And
I was like, the change from 15 years ago to now of what I just saw, it was like a micro like cosm of what the whole picture, right? It was like, I was like, wow, like the change in mentality of even like the police departments, even in conservative areas like that we just named, have made such leaps and bounds in policy. And that doesn't mean we don't have a long way to go. But it really blew me away. And that's really hats off, like, I guess, to the generation that's coming up of saying, like, making their own decision, I guess, of saying, like, hey, like, we're going to decide, you know, and we've seen cannabis interact with so many people around us. And it's not the devil's lettuce craziness that, like, we were taught, like, or the culture of law enforcement has tried to, like, hammer into us.
Yeah, most. I mean, and it provides so many benefits, you know, to community when it's done in the, you know, in the right way and really brought into communities in the most responsible way it can be. There's so much benefit to it.
Right.
And I think that's really like what the younger generation has seen.
Yeah,
and when they look at it at the alternative to what has been, you know, so proliferated and allowed in our communities like alcohol, and you look at the comparison of the two, and then you start to look at what whole plant medicine and people that understand, you know, using plants and apothecary rather than laboratories,
right,
to heal yourself. There's so many benefits across the board, you know.
The hypocrisy of alcohol and cannabis in the U.S. to this day is still so crazy to me. And you're seeing the alcohol industry like really like dig in on certain things. We have the state fair coming up, and last year we had a situation where like the first 3 days or something, we couldn't sell like actual cannabis because the beer industry had the first 3 days of the fair. And it was just a weird thing, like to say to another industry or to another, like, you can't sell hot dogs this day because we're selling beer.
Yeah,
you know, like you wouldn't be able to get that off anywhere else.
It's so, man, and they've had this kind of control, you know, for so long, and they're so powerful in the state legislatures, in the federal legislature. And they don't. That's you know, a lot of people in different industries kind of play dirty in that sense, and they definitely see it as a threat. I mean, you can see the statistics on alcohol compared to the cannabis sales where it's legally allowed, and the cannabis sales, especially with the new generation, the cannabis sales are going to definitely overtake alcohol as we go, especially as the beverages are more widely available, and there is no doubt. But I do think that, you know, as we move as an industry, we also have got to take lessons from alcohol in the way that, you know, that they have really made the industry and not get, you know, yes, you have to be regulated. Yes, we're, you know, an adult consumable on certain things. There's no doubt. But you're not seeing the alcohol industry getting taxed to no existence.
No.
Yeah, they've got a 100-year jump on us, and there's some things about it. But we also have definitely got to look at how to be organized to affect our state legislatures and to really like make an effect. You know, one of the things though, I think you see them be so they don't know how to even have a good play in these games, right? They came out of the gate trying to, and you can see this in the early years in California, and the suits can't win in this game. And so they're also, I think that's part of like where they come out like, well, we get the first 3 days of the fair. We're not even going to let you sell cannabis, because they tried to make a play in it. And I don't think that, that it isn't something that you just produce like you do oats and wheat and put them in a brewery and make it all work.
Yeah, they have to lopside the playing field, because they know they're going up against a winning team.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you're guerrilla growing up in Mendo. You end up getting a property up in Willits, you said, right?
Yeah. So I was up there for about 7 summers or so, just working for the folks we met, and then I got a place in 2005. Yeah, I was I had been working for years and years and things. I had saved up a little money, and so I bought my own place. And again, that was before, back in about 01, I can remember it was like the 3rd summer I'm up there. And we had been growing, like guerrilla growing for all those years. And it was really, I believe, the first case that somebody had won that they had gotten rolled, and they had less than 100 plants. They had like 99 or 98 plants. And they were able to get off in a local superior court there in Mendo. And I met the guy we worked for. I remember coming up, and we're about to be planting everything out on the ridge. And he's like, nope, we're changing it up. Like, we're going full sun this year, doing like, 100-gallon pots and doing them like in the full sun. And it was life-changing, right? Because before that, I mean, the amount of work it just took to get every water line buried so they couldn't be seen by the helicopters thermally, to get all the soil and all the pots and all the things out on the ridge, to be able to pull up with your 4-wheeler, like right to the plant, and, have your 4-wheeler just pull your soil right up.
Right.
And all of a sudden, we were growing like 2-3 pound plants. And
those are trees, those aren't plants.
Yeah, exactly. But we were all of a sudden just like, it was such a different, it was life changing. Right. And as long as it was less than 100, if it was 99 plants or so, they were not
popping the federal law.
Us. The helicopters were going to looking for the larger.
For sure.
The larger.
It's not worth it to them.
Exactly. So that really changed up a lot, and it was that was also like before. It was there was such a smaller number of people up there were growing in the guerrilla days.
Oh yeah,
that was kind of the first phase of like, a lot of people starting to go, okay, like I'm going to buy a property, or I'm going to do, and then so. That was the first year that I got my place, and it was a cool time, man. It definitely was.
That was like 2005 era, right when the perps were at the fucking peak of the game, right there.
Yeah, man. So it was my. So when I began out growing in Laytonville in '98, I can remember and I was a pretty young kid, but the guy I worked for was older and had been up there since the '80s, and. Mm-hmm. They knew some folks, and I remember going up to Garberville, and we got cuts of the perps, and that was like
back in '98.
'98.
That's one of the early.
It just had come back from Afghanistan. These guys would go over there every year and bring back genetics.
Damn.
And so they had just brought it back, and back then it was like very few people grew it.
This is a motherfucking origin story right here.
Yeah, no, it's back. We grew quite a bit of it, but still back then we weren't growing it like there was a very small amount of it out of the crop every year. It wasn't like a huge. Right. By 05, it becomes like the hype.
Right. That's when we ended up going up. We had it plug up in Garberville, but our main spot was down in Willits. My boy Jerry Scarborough. Shout out to Jerry. Yeah, man. When we started really messing with him in 04, 05, 06. The granddaddy,
yeah, man, it was rocking, and
man,
you couldn't
Urkel, the Mendo perps, granddaddy. Like, if you could get anything in that had that purple smell, like people don't understand about like the purple smell and the purple flavor when we say that. We're not talking about like an actual color. Those strains had a particular terpene profile that was unique to just them.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it was like you'd smoke the real perps and it would definitely, it would last. You'd taste it an hour later and, you'd be like, damn, what does that taste? Oh, yeah, let's just smoke the fatty of the perps.
Right. That was the original like candy before the candy.
It was definitely, man. And it was, the terps, it would just permeate the whole room. Yep. And yeah, those years were unreal. Like the perps, rocked it at
4,200 a pound.
100%, and as many as you could bring.
As many as you could bring. Yeah. Well, you got 50, you got 100, all of them cash.
That's right, definitely. We had some good years there, and again, but at the same point, we. In Mendo, it was definitely still like we were just talking about. Like it was still the gauntlet. Like we were still being treated.
You had to get that 100 pack down from Mendocino.
There was still a whole way to have problems, and we did throughout. Multiple times. Like they tried to prosecute me throughout the years, so many different times, and in those years they were still there was still that level of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they were still doing the raids and all that crazy nonsense.
It was not,
So what's the transition after the Mendo property and the grow out there?
Yeah, so we basically, in about 2008, I think that was really the year that I decided that I had been.
Oh, my trial year, the year my trial went off.
Yeah, so before that, I had started to go down to the Bay really since about 2000, and I would always bring a lot of 10 packs and 50 packs and all the keef and all the herb, hash that we would make. Right. And I would bring them into the clubs.
The third floor.
I knew Larry, I knew Spark, those guys. Rick and Debbie and ATN at Berkeley Patients Group. And so we were, for those years, I would just bring packs consistently down. And those were
golden era, man.
Those were really good years. And
I loved that time. When you could come down, bring the packs in, get $4 grand, 3,500.
Yeah, man, it really was. Those were also the years where the people that owned dispensaries were true activists and true advocates, and it was really being done in the best dispensaries like Berkeley Patients Group. It was all about compassion, and it was really
shout out ETN too.
Yeah, man, shout out ETN, Debbie Goldsberry, and those guys back in the day were really true activists that were doing it for the right reasons. Still are 100%, and that's really what taught me along the way. But we were able to, as growers and as brokers, we were able to rock it, and it was real. There was no doubt. But again, it was also still at the level of risk. Like
for sure, when the risk equaled the reward. For sure,
that is 100% how it was.
Again, like you said, like going up and getting the 50 pack or whatever was only one part of the play. You had to still get it back down the gauntlet. You still had to get it back into the Bay Area. To me, I still had to get it back into the Bay Area and then over into the Valley.
Right.
And then you had to like get it off.
Yeah, man. No, I mean it was a real game, and but what was cool is it was all for such good things. And again, like with the right people, cannabis, was
flourishes.
Back in that, it flourishes. It thrives, and those were some really good years, and really what taught me at a certain point where it was like I needed to look at moving to the next level, which was getting my own dispensary going. And so at that point, that was about 2008. I bought my property 2005, had some really, really good years. Yeah. And I was up at Reggae on the River, and I ran into Andre, and she
Special?
Yeah, exactly. So at the time she had had a dispensary in Berkeley, and I had my property up in Mendo. Have been rocking. I mean, she had a
spot over with.
She had a dispensary in Sacramento at the time, not in Berkeley, and that's what me and Andre became partners on. Was that she had known the guy that had a permit in Berkeley, but didn't have the real estate. And
Jim.
So Jim Squatter.
Yeah, I know Jim. I was just hanging out with them a few months ago at CBCB.
So Jim was the man. And
Jim's a
Jim
nut.
really opened
I love
up.
Jim.
He's amazing.
Awesome.
Squatter's like one of the most real activists.
Real activist.
Yeah.
Real motherfucking activist.
On the truest levels. And so he basically had come to Andre and to me, and it was, he had to move the dispensary to CBCB out of this Long Haul bookstore, which was just down the street, and it's the Anarchist bookstore in Berkeley.
Yeah, and when we say dispensary, it's not like how people think of dispensary today.
No,
this is like kind of like house / sell weed there / sell mushrooms there / whatever.
Yeah, so Jim in 1993, 3 years before Prop 215 passes, at the long haul bookstore, they decide that on Friday afternoons that they're going to give away free cannabis to anybody in Berkeley. And they would have a line of people every Friday afternoon. And Jim would literally give away free cannabis. And there would be a lot of people in the, full on wheelchairs. And I mean, it was back in the days of where it was really
real
people
compassion.
That needed it as medicine.
Yeah, real compassion.
And true compassion. And so really that was like the first dispensary in Berkeley. And,
that might be first dispensary.
It may be in the country. I think that, there was some things happening in the Castro at the time and some things happening
but
on
those
Venice.
were kind of loose, club, like
exactly. Jim was like really organized.
Right,
even back in those days, they would like keep the, they had the way they did it was like thought out. They thought out everything. That's where the people that started Earth first, would gather. I mean, these people were very organized in what they were doing. And
Berkeley, I mean, that's been the epicenter of activism in California since day one.
That's right. So and so the bookstore lets Jim run his dispensary out of there. So basically, once 215 passes, they go full on.
They're
doing it every day.
Blow it out.
But finally, the board of the bookstore, I think somewhere around like 05 is like, look, squatter, like you guys got
too much purple Urkel rolling out.
We got to run a bookstore here. Like you got to find a spot. So that's how me and Andre become partners in that day. It was to get this store in Berkeley off of the ground. And in Berkeley, and it's probably still this way, there's a family that owns all the commercial real estate, and they did not like cannabis. So we were forced to just purchase the building where the CBCB is today, that building. And so
that's an awesome spot today too, man.
It was awesome, man. It was really like, but it was 08. We were trying to get that purchased. It was also the beginning of all the like real estate craziness. So
the worst time to buy property in the history of US.
It was
I know I bought a house right on 08.
Yeah.
Right before the crash.
It was rough, man. But we got it done. And so that's what really gets me into dispensaries. And at the same time, I had always kept my place in Tahoe through all those years. And I had owned a coffee shop there.
Okay.
And the coffee shop had moved into where Tahoe Wellness is now. And there was no dispensaries in all of Lake Tahoe. And a lot of that was also, we were in the Eastern District as, we are now. Yeah. And there was a lot of fear that revolved around exactly what you went through. And
the Eastern District is no joke. So for people that don't understand, the U.S. is broken into 94 court districts for lack of better terms, and the Eastern District of California is one of the worst.
Yeah, it definitely.
And for length of sentencing, for amount of people sentenced, and all that.
It really is, and it's it's due to the jury pool that you can pull from in the Eastern District, and a lot of farmers.
My jury was rough, man.
Yeah, it was just
rough.
So it really kept a lot of people from wanting to open, and Andre had been in Sacramento since 05, and one of the
River City, right?
With River City and Bill, and they again only true activists at that time, especially in the Eastern District.
So Bill calls us to the dispensary like a few days before he opens, me and Ricardo. And we're like hanging out, like talking about him opening and stuff like that. Yeah, Bill was a G, man.
Yeah, man. All right.
You had to be a good man. You had to be kind of a little bit wild back then.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like to the early dispensary owners, like you had to be like a business entrepreneur, but then you had to have like a wild card to you too.
100%. I mean, you lived every day, basically waiting to be brought down, and so but it was so much compassion and love and so much good energy, and really like spreading so much knowledge to people.
Absolutely.
So it was. That's why you were able to overcome some of the kind of fears that came along with it, as well as just living at the edge every day.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and Mickey Martin, who started Tainted, Mickey was a real old friend and taught me a lot back
Talk
in the
about
day.
Another activist.
Yeah, exactly. It was,
he would make people get active.
That's for sure, man. He was.
Whoa.
Yeah, definitely.
Mickey, man. He's a good dude, man. Parents for Pot. I know that organization's not around anymore. They used to take care of our kids, like all men and women who were incarcerated. They'd give the kids like Christmas presents and stuff.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, Mickey was a good one, man.
Yes, he was, most definitely, man. R.I.P. on Mickey.
Yeah, R.I.P. Man. I'd pour liquor out if this wasn't in the house right now.
Yep.
Oh man. So you go in. you decide, all right, we're getting into the dispensaries in the Eastern District. But again, like people say this to me too all the time, like, why the hell would you open like in Modesto? Why would you open in the Eastern District? That's where it was like most needed. Like there was already a few like dispensaries popping up in the early days in the Bay Area, and most of the people from Sacramento, Modesto, Stockton had to drive all the way to the Bay Area to get medicine.
100%. And that was really what I saw. Is I had been in Tahoe since I moved there when I was 17, and was there every winter and a lot of the days in the summer when I'd get off in Mendo. So I knew that community very well. We're also on the state line of Nevada, so when we opened, Tahoe Wellness, which was January of 2009. It was still highly illegal throughout the whole state of Nevada. Like, so, you had no dispensaries anywhere close.
2009, totally different time.
Yeah, it was still a felony for even a seed. Nevada's laws were at the strictest. And I believe it was 2014 is when they passed. So it might have been 2012, somewhere in that ballpark that they changed it. But in those first years of opening Tahoe Wellness, like, it was amazing what we saw from people coming over from Nevada, as well as all throughout the Sierras, not just Tahoe, people driving from, as far as the Sequoias and, all the way from Mojave, basically all the way up past Susanville through Reno. I mean, we were the only spot. We saw so many people that were truly sick,
For sure.
One of the cool things that I can say of being in that kind of small town is, like, our local hospital early on in 2011 starts sending cancer patients to us.
Is that right? Well, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and it was because our local hospital isn't part of any major Kaiser. They were started as a community hospital, and the doctors locally had seen these results, just like as a dispensary owner sees them, where you're seeing people coming in with serious diagnosis of stage 3,
literally
stage
in
4,
front of your face,
and they're coming back with like full reductions in tumors and seeing so
blood
much
cell counts up and everything.
100%. So we that was one of the really cool things that we didn't see at our dispensaries in Berkeley or Sacramento. Me and Andre went on to open a second dispensary in Sacramento. So at one time in those early years.
What was the dispensary? Was that Capital?
Yeah, so Capital Wellness, that was the original one she had on X and 14th.
Okay.
And then we went and did a second one in Sacramento, 29th and U, which I believe, became Abatine many years later.
Is it still around now?
I believe Abatine is. So what's the trip? So we get into this whole thing, and we've got 4 dispensaries, right? And this is 2009, basically, we opened. Okay. The other one in Sac, we opened Get Tahoe Wellness. So you guys are still
4 of the few that are even have the balls to open.
Yeah, so at that time, we were like the largest, this is before.
There's no connected or anything right now, right?
No, not at all. And it was really before a time that the industry hadn't happened yet, right? It was still just
in the inception of it.
Exactly. And it was just activists. Like, there was no, Obama was just getting elected, and at the time,
and he was just trying to like dropping little words that he might be friendly to this, maybe.
Exactly. And we thought we had hope. Like, we really thought when Obama, it was kind of like just what happened to us right before Biden got out. We're like, yeah, we're here. It was good. Yeah, exactly. And
then you looked in the TV box, and it was just a brick.
It was just a brick. That's right, man. It was, but we really thought that was kind of, and I think that was the first little phase you start to see.
I was in Fresno County when we were trying to get Obama elected, and I'm calling all my people from the payphone. You have to vote for him. This is going to get me out of prison. This is going to be this changing cannabis policy. And man, did I feel duped at the end of that.
It's true, man. And Obama,
Obama did let my co-defendant, like, this is not, I'm not trying to throw shade on Obama. This is not a political thing or anything like that. He let my co-defendant out. So like, shout out Obama for that. But it for what we were expecting and like what my family wanted, it was like a big zero.
No, exactly. But it was the first little bit of hope. We were coming out of like those eras with
Bush. Coming out of the dark ages.
Exactly. We really did think like, okay, but what that did,
the drug war
starts the first shift of people starting to enter the aspect of the dispensary world and the production that aren't activists, that were not coming out of kind of that realm. It was the first time you really started to see like the suits appear.
Right.
And
That's the part I missed.
yeah, exactly. Which, man, that part, it's been in a way difficult to watch. I mean,
Right.
there was a big evolution that comes out of it.
I feel like it's like in the Matrix where all those guys just start appearing where they all look the same and they're all in the suits. And now like all of a sudden they're like all at the industry parties everywhere.
Definitely, man. It was, and it was in a way, it was hard to watch. In some other ways, though, it was pretty cool to see that, all these new states are opening up. And early on, we were activists. And so we thought, awesome, we've got to get organized to get, legalization done here in California. And so that's when Prop 19 comes about, and Richard Lee and Dale from Oaksterdam.
Yep. Shout out Richard and Dale.
Yeah, we were, very involved, me and Andre and the MPP, and all of that was happening. And so we were organized and got, we had what was called the Revolutionary Love Project, which was basically our 4 dispensaries.
You guys are going way too hippie.
We were way hippies, man. No joke style.
Yeah, I love
it. But it was a way for us to really try to do, the activism side. At the time,
right.
We got these places in Oak Park to do like a community garden, and we're really trying
South
to get
Sac in the house.
Yeah, it was because our dispensaries were right down the street,
Right.
and really that was, Andre was always, pushing the envelope.
She still is today.
100%. And so it was really cool what we were trying to do, but we were also trying to affect policy and push that forward.
Right.
And, you look back and it was like, man, if we lost Prop 19 barely, and if you read that law and look at what it was compared to where we live today with Prop 64, it's pretty unbelievable what, and what we were fighting about then and why it didn't pass is really from within our own community, within our own,
it was
the folks here. So going through those days, taught me a lot. And
about the political process.
Well, not only the political process, but like the effect of, when you see...
When you become disjointed?
Yeah, that as well as like when you see something come out from what is like the culture of something that has created a culture, and you watch it
like
try to be capitalized and try to get, capitalism takes hold of it, which is
starts monetizing it.
Exactly, which we'd always made great money and there was money that surrounded it, but it was the people that were truly part of it that weren't just there to come in,
right.
to make money and to move on like most of the society's built on, which I get it. That's part of what,
right.
the culture that we somewhat live in. But it's been eye-opening without a doubt to see,
right.
to see where we're,
I wrote about that a little bit in prison about like how it was a double-edged sword. Like we fought for cannabis to go mainstream, but then like the natural progression in the US of something that goes mainstream becomes a commodity, becomes a victim of capitalism, right? And now the factors of capitalism start becoming involved in it. And then we get mad at the end of it when we go, hey, these companies are only operating based on profit margin.
Right. Yeah, but that's what it is. And
that's what it is.
It can essentially, in a sense, survive. I mean, in some ways, you can build things that aren't completely all based on the profitability, but at the same point, when you get it into a competitive market and a free market, like it is, that is part of it.
Right.
At the same time, though, there's also a whole element about what cannabis is and how it is a plant and how the genetics of its plant and its, as well as the where it is able to grow, and the plant life can hold down a whole lot in the same way that wine has held down with, the smallest vineyards producing the best wine in the world because of where they're at, the appellation that they exist in.
Right.
Cannabis has that opportunity.
Yes.
If we allow it to
agree.
be free and not only grown by the folks that get licensed and have the ability to grow it, you've got to allow people that are from the small farms and that have the genetics to be able to have a play in the market. And
I think I'm seeing something now though. And again, like I wasn't around for when the Matrix suits all came around into the scene, right? But I think I'm really seeing something in the market right now where there's almost a return to legacy, where people are starting to like go towards the brands that they can feel an authenticity from.
100%.
And I mean, that to me is a great thing because now we're starting to see the people that actually care about the plant, the stewards of the plant that really want to bring it to the people in its highest potential, are the customers and the market is starting to kind of gravitate towards them and away from some of the bigger companies and bigger brands and the bigger matrices of of that we had, like that all rushed in at the beginning. I hope it continues.
I think you're completely right, and I think it will continue. Again, it's like you look at what's available to the people and kind of how people will gravitate. You go into the middle of the country and beer distribution is only to a small number of distributors, and there's very smooth, like very, very few microbreweries. Well, that's all the people know. Right. As soon as you start to open that up and you get into the West Coast and that area, and there's so many more selections of different brews, all of a sudden people are open to that, right? And I think that's why it's critical that we make sure that there are the people that are true purveyors, that truly want to source it from the true sources, that smoke it themselves, that really get into what they're providing. Yeah, that part's huge.
That part, really,
it's a big part of it.
It blew me away when I came out into a lot of these conventions and stuff, and I'm meeting all these brand owners, and they're like, "Oh no, I don't smoke." And I'm like, interesting.
It's
right. Is that like a cook who doesn't eat?
That's right. That's what I'm saying, man. It's like, how do you even? That's like a winemaker that won't taste his wine, or anybody. I mean, especially.
So I guess you just hire testers. Is that what it is? I'm not sure.
And even think about like a gardener or a farmer that won't take a bite of their apple that they grew. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
buy this, but I can't take a bite of it.
Right. It's crazy. But I mean, it is the truth. That's like, as people start to pay attention to that,
Right.
In our dispensary, we have a consumption lounge, and I try to always
the savior of dispensaries.
All the time, and again, that's people get to know you, and it will gravitate to their brand. Especially they can sit down there and smoke with you and talk about the cannabis that you're providing.
Let's talk about that for a second. The cannabis lounge. We had a law that just passed here in Sacramento that allowed lounges. And then we had a state law that allowed you to sell other items besides only cannabis items, right? So to me, projecting out, let's say we project out 5 years and say there's full legalization and interstate commerce. What makes people have to go to the dispensary now? If I can get on my phone and I can order whatever brand I want to, and it comes same day like Amazon, like however my coffee filters come or whatever. What makes me want to go to the dispensary? And it's going to be the lounge experience of where I get to say, "Hey, Cody, come meet me over here at the lounge. And man, I got some new weed I just grew, or I just grabbed over here, and we can fire up and we can talk about what we're going to do tonight or whatever."
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The social aspect in the lounge is such a big part of that. I mean, the other part of the social aspect is that what we see currently, where people like to come in and interact with their bud tender. They do. They like to come in
and talk to them.
And they want to know that they have bud tenders that they prefer to work with.
Right, they'll wait on them. They'll be like, no, I'll wait.
And that's a really big part of it. And that's, somewhat with the concept that we've had is why we've tried to keep it. Yeah, we have some shelves with some different, of our gummies and things, but I truly do think that a lot of what people like is that social interaction. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't just stop at the bud tending counter. Definitely the lounge is such a big part of that. And I think that the new laws that have passed that allow for, the sale of tickets to events and allow us to create lounges that are more like venues is a massive part of that. We have a long way to go here in California that can
It's crazy how we get something small like that and we're like, yeah, that's so great when it's like a no-brainer situation. Like, allow us to sell a bottle of water at our lounge.
It's crazy what they did, man, with the over-regulation here in California, has been such a challenge. And
that's part of what let's touch on Prop 64 and over-regulation. You're not a fan of Prop 64, are you?
No, so I really fought, AB 266 and what was known as McCursa, which was the beginning of trying to regulate, SB 420 and Prop 215.
Right.
That really was such a mistake, and that's where a lot of this kind of came from. And a big part of what also happened was that when Prop 19 lost and by a small margin
in 2010,
the people that
man, that broke my heart too. I thought we had that.
It was, man.
I was like, man, we're going.
It was so
first
close,
state.
Man.
What's up?
And the thing is
then we let Colorado beat us.
Exactly. We could learn though from Prop 19 and some of the ways that we did get it on the ballot, and it didn't cost us $10 million.
Yeah,
and what a lot of people will try to discourage people, us and the industry of California with thinking we can't go back to the ballot is always because, you got $10 million to get the signatures. Well, we got Prop 19 on the ballot for about like 1.4 million.
Right.
We were a big part of raising the funds for it back in those days.
When you say we, who you talking about?
Let's
put some addresses on the envelopes.
One of the largest things that funded it actually was that the MPP had connections at the time, and Hugh Hefner still had the Playboy Mansion.
Oh, the big party.
And there was, and basically that he opened it up for the legalization of cannabis. And basically, the only thing that had to be paid was the catering bill, and he let a big party happen. And so it was a donation for $1,000 a ticket.
Man,
we were able to sell
shout
700.
Out Hugh Hefner.
Yeah, they were able, to
Am I
put
supposed
together,
to say that? I don't know.
No, it was actually at the time. I mean, he did a lot for the legalization in a sense because there was $750,000 raised in one night.
Holy shit!
By having
that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, it was unreal. Like, and so that
who got that? MPP got that.
So the MPP was who did it. Dale from Oaksterdam, the Revolutionary Love
Who
Project.
got the 750, Cody?
It all went to Prop 19.
It all went to the campaign.
It all went to the campaign.
Okay, dope.
And again, that's part of what, like, back, we have to remember, like, if we do get to grassroots level, and sure, it may not be the Playboy Mansion, but there's places you can get creative with grassroots activism and raise the funds that we need to.
Maybe we could hit Jelly Roll, see if he'll let us throw a party at his ranch or something.
There's
Jelly Roll. We need a party at your ranch to raise $750,000.
California is a spot that really it's we need to get resourceful if we wanted to turn this around, because what happened is that after that we didn't get that passed, we started to organize around a new initiative, and Dale Sky was really trying to lead the way in that. And
Dale's awesome.
Dale's amazing.
Jeff Jones, Dale.
Yes, they're the old real activist, and honestly, like, we were working at trying to get a new draft of initiative, and basically a group formed that was surrounded by the DPA and a few people, and they kind of pushed us all out of the room that were the current operators, old activists. And
you mean they don't want this? You don't want the stakeholders in the room when you're making policy?
Watch. Like, we were when they drafted Prop 64, they literally ignored the folks like myself,
that it was going to directly
Steve
affect.
D'Angelo, Dale Sky. All of us that were actual operators, whether we were dispensary owners, cultivators, and they literally did not and would not take our input. And they got funding.
So you don't want to learn to play baseball from the baseball players?
No, yeah, it was. I mean, it was nuts, And Sean Parker was the guy's name who founded Napster, and he funded Prop 64.
Facebook too. He was with Facebook.
He was part of, I believe, Facebook at the time, but he funded it with about a $20 million,
I remember
donation to the Prop 64 campaign. And so, in the first drafts of it,
20 mil is helpful.
Yeah, you think? I mean, it was crazy. The first drafts of it, me as well as a lot of the old activists were really against it. And part of it was just mocking what the legislature had come out with 266, AB Assembly Bill 266.
The one nobody liked.
And it was unbelievable. That first draft was like, mandatory distribution. So there was no ability for anybody. And if you had a distribution license, you couldn't have any other license, was like in the first draft of it.
Right.
And it had been written like so much in such a corporate manner, and we were able to get some things.
Why do you think that was?
Well, I think that if you hire the right lawyers and you're somebody that has hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, a lot of times a lawyer works for their client, and a lot of times if they're gonna be paying for policy, they're gonna write it for the benefit of themselves. And that's kind of, I think, what we saw out of Prop 64. Mm-hmm. And the fact was so I fought Prop 64 all the way up until a week before the election. And it was a week before the election, and we held a panel in South Lake Tahoe, and I think it was Omar came up on the panel.
Figueroa?
We had a few people there. And I had been
another legacy attorney, activist.
Yes, definitely. Omar was the man, and still is.
He's going to be judged. He's going to be judged.
Exactly. No, Omar is such a good man.
Don't worry, Omar. We got you.
Such a good
Vote
lawyer.
for Omar.
Such a real guy, man.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Which
out of the era of Tony Serra.
That's right. Yeah, definitely. Tony also, man.
Another real one. He was in the same joint I was.
Yeah.
I mean, I was there well after him, but
for his tax, he wouldn't pay his taxes. I love Tony. Yeah,
Tony's the G.
Tony's definitely the G. And so, yeah, that era, you know, of watching Prop 64, again, I fought it, and we got some things out of it, but really they were able to pass and put forward a lot of the people that, in my opinion, and still today, needs to massively be reformed and possibly just a new voter initiative.
So what are you saying? What are you saying? Blow the whole thing up?
Well, I think we need to go back to the people. I mean, I think we're basically over 7 years into it, and we've seen a
mass exodus,
a mass almost failure of policy, and you can see why in so many different realms of where the issues lie. And I'd love to say that the legislature and the governor would be able to fix it for us, but I don't know that's, what we're talking about them fixing is, you know, the tax rate, which takes 2/3 of both houses, the Assembly and the Senate, and a governor willing to sign it.
Right.
And the biggest issue is that when they wrote Prop 64 and put in the 15% excise tax, they promised different services to be provided by that are after school programs and some things that might be of good.
I just met some of them at the last council meeting or state meeting that we went to in Sacramento, and they were like tricked into thinking that if they don't increase the taxes on cannabis, then their programs go away and it hurts their community. Yes. And it was a weird thing that they pitted these like community organizations that actually I would support, like in 20 Sundays out of a month and twice on Saturday.
Right.
We're mad because the tax got put on freeze and it would affect their programs. So I was kind of like caught in between trying to explain it to them, like, yo, you're getting used as a puppet right now,
exactly,
really.
Man.
And it's really sad because your program should be funded. It just shouldn't rely on a cannabis tax.
No, that's exactly
that was totally false to begin with.
It is so wrong in the way that, and so what they've got, even the governor, right? Newsom believes like he can't allow, and this is why he's trying to bring the excise up to 19, is because the people in their mind voted for this law because of the social services it was going to provide.
Right.
And that he can't go against the will of what the people were promised. And therefore, so that's what tells me that the only way to fix this is back to the people. But kind of going back to,
that's a good point.
I fought this till the week before the vote at the election. And I fought it very publicly all over Facebook all the time on it. Spoke a lot on different panels against it. And I decided to endorse it the week before the vote. And here's why. We had in Prop 19, for the first time ever as the people of California, essentially validated the criminal code that was on the books in California against cannabis. Before that, the criminal code...
By voting against it, you're saying it's actually a vote for the criminal code.
We're validating this criminal code. And it was the first time that people had ever said that. All this had come out of Congress in 38, all the way up to different state laws getting passed by the legislatures and signed by the governor. But the people had never really spoken on it until 2010 and saying that, yes, they, by a small majority. And if we would have done that again in 2016 with Prop 64, I think it gave prosecutors in all the different counties in California a real card to use against juries that says, look, these people, there's been 2 votes against this. These felony crimes are validated.
Right.
And at the time, coming out of Mendo and Humboldt and all of that area, there was a lot of cases pending of, different,
waiting to see which way the law would go.
Right. And if it would have went that other way, I think that you would have seen a serious amount of people prosecuted at the time. And it was really validating that cannabis was a crime.
Right.
And so it was hard for me to endorse it at the time, but it was what, in my opinion, still was the right thing to do, because now if we go back to try to fix it through a new voter initiative, we don't have to focus on legalization. The people have already spoken and it's legal. Now we can talk about like cannabis economics and looking at a new bill that makes it economically work for the state and doing things like opening it up to global trade at a state level. Because like right now—
Hold on, you're talking my language now. Did you say global trade at a state level?
Absolutely. So California, if we position ourselves right, we'll be one of the largest export, you could call it we'll call it a nation, because maybe it will be soon.
You mean the fifth largest economy in the world?
But on the real, like, it would be at the top of the world of exporting cannabis, right? But right now we don't have federal law to allow that, but also our state law with Prop 64 isn't even positioned for us to be able
built for that,
to do that trade. Yeah. We wouldn't even be able to move it out of metric to sell it to a buyer from India.
Right.
Like if we got a buyer from across the globe, from wherever.
Man, don't get the internet started on metrics.
Right.
Don't do it.
Yeah,
Elliot Lewis right now is gearing up to do some rant on it.
So we've got to really change the state law to get the markets prepared at the state level to be able to do that export. And yes, we need federal law to also transition.
Right.
But if federal law transitioned tomorrow, we'd be trying to depend on the legislature in Sacramento
to figure it out.
And look at what that's done. Right. So when we go back out to the voters, I've proposed.
You'd see me with a gray beard sitting in front of like the legislature, like, we need global trade.
Yeah, right.
It's 2055.
Exactly. That'll be the case, and we still probably won't win. I mean, and so, and we could do a lot going back to the vote. Definitely the tax rate
for
is
the
like
people. Bring
100%.
it to the people.
And the fact is that if we could take like this excise to 15 to 1%, right, and you open up global trade and you open up what's possible, we could get to 15x the revenue that we're at today, and the tax collected, if we were at 15x revenue, would be the same we are today. It'd be 1% of 15 times where we're at today. And so, and the other thing that the vote in the legislature we could do is these people that are getting the funding, these social programs, we could redirect where that funding is coming from to fund those agencies. We could pull it out of the general fund of the budget. And then that would guarantee them, that would make them not fight against us.
Listen to this.
That's an ability, because as the vote of the people, we have a lot of authority.
Right. In California especially.
100%. The vote of the people is the supreme law.
Right.
The legislature, if you write the initiative right, can't even change or touch it.
Right.
And we don't want them to necessarily.
And that's not all states. All states don't have that law like that.
And it's sometimes, there are, and they even wrote Prop 64 for the right to amendment with 2/3 of the vote of the legislature in certain ways. And there's sometimes a need. But for instance, like Prop 215 didn't allow that, right? Because they would have just tried to squash it back in 96. And so we have a lot of rights at the vote of the people. Is it always the right time to create policy and legislate? Sometimes it's not, but it's why we're here today from Prop 215, from the vote of the people.
Yes. No, I agree 100%. You get into politics. Why do you get into politics? What gets Cody Bass into politics?
Yeah. So
you're a guerrilla grower. You're growing perps up in Mendo. You got mud all over you, and you got a 4x4, and you got this is not the normal mayor. You own a dispensary, ladies and gentlemen. This is not your normal U.S. mayor. What gets Cody Bass into politics?
So I had Tahoe Wellness open. It was really about 6 years that we had it open.
You opened it in 2009, so this is about 2015, 16?
Yeah, 2015. It was really so. Basically, at the time, again, I was really an activist and an advocate, and I had been up in Tahoe with Tahoe Wellness open in the first 6 years, and really till 2018.
Being a disruptor.
Yeah, well,
being a disruptor.
But we also, all the cannabis we sourced was from people that were members of our collective or our cooperative, and so
had to be like that back then.
100%. We had well over 100 to maybe 150 growers that supplied Tahoe Wellness, and it was because they were.
And you knew which ones that came in, you were really happy.
Yeah,
and you knew which ones that came in, you were like, all right,
definitely. and so everybody had small grows at their house. They had legal grows because they were medical patients, but we had a local, our El Dorado Narcotics enforcement team that was really like raiding medical cannabis growers, and essentially they had rated, throughout the years, over 100 of our providers, and it was unbelievable, and it was
one of those
people's lives.
Cross-deputized task force and shit.
Exactly, because we're on the border in Nevada, so they had federal authorities and all this.
Modesto has the same thing.
And it was, and so basically one day we wake up and it's on the paper that the head guy, his name was Mark Zlindick, he was the head commander of all this, was busted down at his house in Gardnerville. That's in Nevada, down the hill from us. And basically that he was caught with possession of methamphetamine and I forget what their other charge, but they tried to like sweep this under the rug, And so me being the activist
the cop is caught with all this?
Yeah, he's the head of the narcotics enforcement team.
And he got a meth lab.
And exactly, but the paper tries to report it like he just had meth, right? And so me being the activist I'm like, oh hell no. Like I like organize I got like 2 busloads of people to go down to the Placerville Board of Supervisors and like demand a federal investigation that, he was busted in the state of Nevada. He's a California deputy. That we had heard that he didn't only have methamphetamine, but he had a meth lab operating at his house.
Right.
I wrote I wrote a letter to the U.S. attorney, and this is before I ever imagined.
This dude's over here arresting patients,
exactly,
sick people, cancer patients who are growing their own plants.
Yeah,
while has a meth lab in there that he's fucking doing Breaking Bad with out into the community.
Exactly, but doing it in another state, right? We're right on the state line, so he's a California deputy taking it into Gardnerville, which is Douglas County, and not and so I do this whole call to action and organize all these folks to go to Placerville. We were supposed to go on June the 2nd, and it was June 1st of 2015. And prior to this, I had worked it out pretty well with the city. I had sat on like a commission way back in 2010, helped write the ordinance. Things were like, they weren't exactly all the way after me. And we had already been through other drama where they had taken out dispensaries that were that weren't operating, with good self-regulation at the time.
Yeah.
So anyways, this is kind of really pit, in a way, some of the law enforcement against me, but it was what needed to happen. And so basically June 1st of 2015, there like 55 deputies raid Tahoe Wellness, raid my house, raid my 90-year-old landlord at gunpoint. And it was due directly to this vindictive that I was going after their deputy.
Kicking up dust.
Yeah, and I mean, I had wrote the U.S. attorney.
It was a retaliation.
Exactly. So it was kind of crazy. So back in that day, we had ASA, and we had a lot of abilities to like activate the activist, especially when a raid would happen.
Right. I remember that. They would say raid happened in here, and everybody would go over there,
and it would hit all the media, and so that all goes out, and it was pretty amazing. Like the SF Chronicle, I believe the LA Times at the time, the next morning they cover the raid, and they straight cover it on the vindictive.
Wow.
Not that a cannabis dispensary gets raided, but that I had done this call to action, and that we were vindictively being raided by El Dorado County sheriffs. And so it really sparked like a huge amount of problems for our local sheriff's department and our local police department at the time. And so at that point, they started to really try to figure out every possible way to get rid of Tahoe Wellness.
Absolutely.
And it was like and they went and they raided my property up in Willits. El Dorado sheriff.
They were getting statewide organization going on this.
They literally tried to like wipe me out at that point. And so that's what starts to get me into like, then Prop 64 passes, and then the city starts to regulate, and they write an ordinance that essentially circle zones around my property that would not have allowed us to ever become adult use, but it was going to license 4 dispensaries.
Gerrymandering.
Yeah, exactly. It was it was unbelievable what the ordinance that they tried to come up and like, it was insane,
Right.
And they ran this narrative that I was just this crazy, drug dealer that was, and that there was this new industry that we needed to regulate, these responsible operators.
Right.
And I had been in the town at that point a decade. We again like operate under the same at a real compassionate model. So
everybody knew you. They knew what you guys were about.
We had been for over a decade giving terminally ill people up to $16 a week, $375 credit because they were terminally ill. And I'd been doing that for 10 years. I provided a community center that had more community activities that weren't just cannabis, but all sorts of community activities. And
that's what we need again. We need that again.
Take us out and then allow these people that never had operated a dispensary was insane. And so what happens, and I had been up against city council, and it was really back in that day, run by, again, the good old boys.
Cowboys.
It was nuts. And
yeah,
it was like, man, it was a different time. So they passed this law, and all of a sudden my only choice was to do a referendum, which means that you're going to hit the streets, and you got 30 days from the time they passed the ordinance.
Well, a local council law?
Yeah, the local council law. So in California, you can do a referendum in most states. And if you go get 10% of the signatures of the elector, the law can't pass. It doesn't become law. And basically it goes back, and they have to negotiate with the proponent of the referendum on being able to pass the law.
Wow.
And so
come back to negotiate with you.
Exactly. Yeah. So we basically, we were able to successfully do that, mainly because we were very well known, but we hit the streets. It was
you guys hit the block hard.
It was a serious taking, and we
call all hands on deck.
We got some help from folks out of Berkeley. Big up to James Anthony. There was a lot of people that really helped.
He was our
us.
land use attorney on our dispensary.
Yeah, James did so much. James is the man.
Yeah, he's been there since day one.
100%. And so we were able to get that passed, but that's what starts to kind of like on that campaign to get the referendum.
Fired up your political.
Yeah, there was a lot
fire
of people
inside
like,
you.
yeah, there's so many people just like, this city's so corrupt and so wrong, and we need new leadership.
We need new leadership,
yeah, exactly.
Cody.
So it's what starts to like, and man, I never in a million years did, and anybody that knew me before would have never in a million years imagined that I would like, that I would step up and do that. But at
those
the
are
same
the best
point,
leaders.
It was
those
so
are
needed.
those are the best leaders. The ones that don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't want. Listen, this is not my thing.
Definitely.
And like the people like kind of force it onto you.
Well, and it's because it comes from like a genuine place.
From a real place.
You're not coming to it or trying to win something necessarily.
No, you're really trying to help.
Exactly. And that's what I think there's a big difference.
Right.
And the folks that look at it as like a career to the folks that are just doing it to try to really make the community a better place and make good policy and see things, that it's a frustrating thing, but there's a lot of good to it as well.
Right.
But yeah, so that's how it ends up happening. And then I step up and run, and we had 3 incumbents, meaning that there was 5 people on council. 3 of them were up for re-election. And me and 2 other folks, one kid that grew up there that's like 10 years younger than me, and then a lady that's 10 years older than me. We all 3 won first, second, and third, and took out the whole and so
all the incumbents.
We took out all the incumbents.
The old political guard. You threw them out of the house.
And since then, right away we replaced the whole entire city. We got a new city manager, new city attorney, new police chief, new fire chief, public works director, development director, parks and rec director. We literally cleaned house and got a whole entirely new.
How much did you spend on your campaign?
So my first campaign, I spent like $5,600. My second campaign, I didn't spend a penny. The only thing I spent on my second campaign, I had to do the filing fee.
Hold on, did you say you didn't spend a penny?
On number 2, I refused to take a penny, and I didn't spend. I didn't even do a website.
Your second campaign for city council, you didn't spend $1?
I did not spend 1 penny on it. I spent my own money because you have to do a filing fee.
Right.
That's like part of the thing. And
right. That was show where all the money came from and all that.
Yeah, it's part of like the FPPC thing, Right. And so I put my own money on that, but I had been there for 4 years, and after you've been doing it for 4 years, you're on the media every day. You're on the local channel. People watch you. You have a record at that point, and at a local level, I don't feel like if you're going to run for re-election, you should have to campaign if you've been doing your job right. There should be no reason that you should have to come up and show people.
Why do I got to convince? Why do I got to convince you? And I just showed you what I did for the team the last 4 years.
That's right. And I had, like normal, I had some conflict about a year before I got elected. Got in a little bit of trouble, but that was nothing for the norm. What happened? So, excuse me. I fell asleep driving home one night,
right?
And it was right after we had a big fire in Tahoe, and I have a Tesla, so I'm driving home late from the Bay, and I fell asleep. And
you pulled a Tiger Woods?
Yeah, it was one of those, yeah. And it wasn't so good, and it hit the media.
So what year was this?
This is like 2021, right?
So
after
you're right.
COVID.
You're council member at this time.
I'm a council member.
Oh, you're tripping.
And it got ABC World News Tonight. It was not a good. It was not a good media look.
Oh,
and
shit.
Got blowing up through the whole town.
Right.
So
city council member.
Everybody really knew who I was at that point. You know. So I was like, all right, if everybody knows who I am, they're either going to elect me or not. And I just didn't feel like running a campaign to try to everybody knew who I was. They were either stoked on me or they weren't. And they were stoked on me. I almost got first place. I got second place. And it was
fresh off the DUI. What's up?
But the DUI wasn't all my DUI stuff. I came back, I had 0.0 alcohol.
Right.
They tested me for every other drug they suspected me for. None of it came back. Like all my test results
right.
were
It was legitimate.
clear.
You fell asleep.
And that's why it was they accused me of some really fatly, not cool things. And
I saw something about like cocaine or some crazy shit.
They tried to say I had coke and meth. All of it came back clear. None of it was coke
they came
and meth.
back. They had to come back and apologize afterwards and say
More or
sorry. Well, they never really apologize.
They never apologized at all. I was like, so you're not going to run that on ABC World News tonight? You're not going to tell the truth, but now you're just going to.
That's not sensational.
No, exactly.
That we were wrong, nobody cares about.
That's right. Shit doesn't sell, man. Come on.
Oh, shit, man.
So it's been a learning thing. Again, I don't think 8 years is enough, but I think public service is good.
Right.
If you've got patience for it, a mind for it, it's something I wish everybody would step up.
You move on from just being city council to actually being mayor of South Lake Tahoe.
That's right. So after I got elected the second time, our mayor is appointed by the council, and last year I was the mayor for a year, and then it's.
That's when I ran into you when I was fresh out of prison. And I'm like,
that's right.
And Mandy says, "Oh, that's Cody. He's the mayor of South Lake Tahoe." I'm like, what?
Yeah, no, most people.
And then she tells me all the story about like the dispensary and all. I was blown away by it.
Most people just think you're like the mayor of the hood. They're
right,
like, oh,
exactly.
you're the mayor of the
like it's a
neighborhood.
nickname.
Exactly.
You're like Jeremy Renner on Kingstown. You're like the mayor just in that's your hood name.
That's right. So most people and then and it's again it's been cool. It's been a learning experience. Right. There's definitely again I think that anybody that has the ability, the mind to do it, and the patience.
Well, you're a real leader. You're a real leader, Cody.
If we could get people to do that and not take this political move as like a career move, but actually what it is, which is public service, trying to make it better, man, our communities would be so much better. Right. And I there are places where it's like that, no doubt. And I think looking at the 8 years I've done it is kind of an example to. If you get in it and do it right, it doesn't have to be politics. You don't even have to run another campaign. No. People will be proud to put you back there.
Coming from the man who spent $0 on his second campaign. That's impressive though. Wow, man. You've had quite a life, man. You came from like pops in prison for weed in Texas. You move out to California. You're guerrilla growing with like some of the best growers in the world, with some of the best strains in the world that have now affected the buying market of the entire world with the perps and the candies and all that. To going into the community, like really that was like persecuting you, or not the community that was persecuting you, but the local government actually, and the cowboys that were persecuting you. To being a representative of the community in South Lake that like the people love and the people get behind, man. That's like when you writing your book.
Right. That's actually one day. That's definitely, I got to get to a place to take the time for sure.
For sure, man.
Yeah, it has been it's been a journey, and without a doubt, like, life is, I think, one of those things. If you stay positive and you do right by people, you do right by yourself, you can really, you can do a lot, and we can change a lot, and we can make the world a better place, and leave it to, to the youth at such a better level and so that's been, I think, part of, for me, like my inspiration is knowing that, like, if you continue on a path and make it good, you're laying down stones that will continue guiding you to a path. Now that doesn't come without like the most unreal challenges,
right?
And
those stones don't come free.
They do not come free by any means. But it's also though, like if you work hard, you can make real things happen and lead with a good example.
Right. Well, man, thanks for coming on the show, brother.
Yeah, man.
This was special. Where can people get a hold of you at if they want to tap in with Cody Bass?
Yeah, so these days I'm in Tahoe full time, but I'm definitely always available. Facebook, Instagram.
What's your tag on Instagram?
It's YDoc Bass, so that's my name backwards. That's my old DJ name back when I was a DJ. Is YDOC.
Damn, I might have to bring you back on the show to talk about that. The old DJ.
Those are the days, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can find me on Instagram or just come up to Tahoe. I'm pretty much around Tahoe Wellness. We're open every day, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Got a dope consumption lounge. So if come by in South Lake,
he's not lying. The consumption lounge is dope. Come by and visit the mayor, man, at Tahoe Wellness. Thanks everybody for tuning in today. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and comment button. And thanks for tuning in to another show.